So the question everybody is asking, where's the Ricoh GR3? Like Forgotten America, who asks, do you still have your GR3? Great channel, subscribed, love your GR3 videos. Seems like it's been 11 months since you shot one on this camera. And he also says, I love the tag along with you on the POV videos. Ever consider adding a GR3X to your arsenal? Absolutely not. No way, no how am I spending another $1,000 on a Ricoh GR3X. The X gives you a 40mm focal point, or focal length. The 3 gives you a 28mm. Technically, it's an 18mm full frame. So, no, I have no interest in spending $2,000 on two cameras to get two separate photo links. If you own a Ricoh GR3 and you've got money to blow, then of course feel free to go out and buy a Ricoh GR3X. And you can carry both of them around and take a wide angle here and a telephoto there, or whatever you want to call that. But that defeats the whole purpose of the camera to me. A lot of people use that phrase, defeats the purpose of the camera, when they're talking about it not being pocketable. It's not a pocket camera. You can put it in your pocket, but it's like a big heavy phone. It's gonna fall out of your pocket. It's gonna, it's gonna go crashing on the ground, something like that. In no way am I carrying around a $1,000 camera in my coat pocket, in my pants pocket. It's got a terrible problem with dust on the sensor. People will say that's a conspiracy, it never happens, but to those that it's happened, it happens. And it's hard to get in there. You have to take the camera apart. A $1,000 camera, you got to take it apart and blow the dust out. Ridiculous. Very poorly constructed in that aspect. Shame on you, Ricoh, and shame on you for that crappy plastic wheel on the back that you also added to the Ricoh GR3X. And you know what I'm talking about. It goes out. And those of you out there, the apologist for Ricoh, will say, all you got to do is blow on it, use a can of spray or whatever the case might be. I say that's ridiculous to have to do that to a $1,000 camera. So I don't use my Ricoh GR3 very much anymore, mostly because I use it I used it more in a condensed fashion than most people would. In other words, I spent almost 2 years with the Ricoh GR3 going out about every week shooting street photography videos, as you see on this channel. But after about 70 or 80 videos, there's not a lot more I can say about the camera other than now that it's starting to wear down a little bit. The plastic wheel, I cannot get it fixed. Pisses me off. Ridiculous to have to even talk about it. Again, the apologist will say, you're just not trying. Shouldn't have to try. You can send it in and get it fixed, then you don't have your camera. So I'm not sure about those two aspects of it. I do not like that. That's not a reason not to buy the camera. You can see I've got about 80 videos, as I said, and I had a blast with it. And I still enjoy it. It just irritates me. The political side of it, the manufacturing side irritates me. The camera itself I really enjoy. I would never put it in my pocket. I would never just casually carry it around. It goes in my camera bag. It goes in a bubble wrap bag. I take care of it because I'm going to sell it one day. There's no question. I'm not keeping it forever. I will sell it one day and eventually upgrade, downgrade. I'm thinking about just getting a regular Ricoh GR, maybe a GR2, just for something to bang around. Then I wouldn't feel as bad putting it in my pocket or banging around with it, as I said. So, but don't let that discourage you. That was not the point. I obviously had a blast. You can go back and watch my videos. I have a blast with that camera. But at some point you move on. Most people don't stick with the same camera forever. If you do, of course, as a hobbyist, that's not a problem. And you may use this Ricoh GR3 or X forever and never buy another camera. And that's great. And as long as you get the satisfaction out of it that you want, then that's what matters. Not my opinion, not Facebook, not YouTube. It's what matters to you. So the problem with the wheel, the problem with dust on a sensor, that's my issue, may not be your issue. And if you're watching this trying to decide whether to go buy this camera or not, I would say go buy it. I mean, if you've got the money, you go buy it. You can always resell it because the Ricoh GR3 does keep a very good resale value, so you can keep that in mind as well. Now we move on to a comment that, well, it ended up not being so polite. The gentleman thought he did not appreciate my tone and the comment was deleted for some reason. I don't delete comments. If you want to leave a negative comment, go right ahead. Doesn't mean I'm going to be nice to you or agree with you, but you know, that doesn't matter. That's the fun and the joy of give and take. Two things, says Paleo SETI magazine. The Ricoh filter adapter is awful. It wobbles. It is expensive. The much cheaper Hogue adapter is metal. It really fits tight. Either will ruin the GR3's compactness, which brings me to number 2. The filter adapter completely ruins the camera's main feature. You can't put it in your pocket. It's still compact, but now it's got a lot of competitors. The Sony RX1 series has better image quality. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you're comparing the Ricoh GR3 to a $3,000 camera. And you might even say that, well, you can get it used for $1,000, so therefore it's a comparable comparison. No, it's not. One camera starts out at $3,000, the other one starts out at $1,000. I'm not going to spend $1,000 on a used Sony plastic RX, whatever you said that was. I don't care. I don't use Sony. And that's a fine, I mean, if you want to make the comparison, and if you own both of them, you can go ahead and do that. But that's like comparing the Canon EOS RP to a Canon R6. Okay, eventually the Canon R6 or 5 or whatever, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 camera, eventually used, they'll be down to $1,000 where the Canon EOS RP is. You know, go ahead, that's fine. I'm not knocking Sony. I'm not knocking Paleo TO magazine or whatever it is either. I'm just saying, you're not comparing apples to apples. So, of course, a $3,000 camera is going to be different. But the compactness and all that, we already covered that. I could care less about compact cameras. Oinkenstein says, great shots, man. Love the fast and loose style. Do you have your ISO cranked because you like the grain? I do like grain. I like shooting film because I like grain. But I don't really shoot the Ricoh GR3 for grain. So, no, the answer is no. I did not shoot for the high noise. However, I also don't like to change the settings a lot when I'm out shooting street photography. So I will typically go out and set the camera, as you see on every video, I set it around 1/400th, 1/500th of a second. I'll go up to f8, f9, f11, something like that to get a good depth of field. Room for error is what I'm looking for. Another reason I don't like the GR3X because it's a very tight, narrow, if you're doing portraiture and stuff like that, that's great. But for just general walking by, I crop everything anyway. There's such great dynamic range with the Ricoh GR3 that you can crop it and not tell that and not lose any quality is what I'm trying to say. So, regarding the ISO, I typically will put it at a max of about 3200. Probably do not need to max it at 3200, but I let it choose the ISO because I don't care about, as you call it, the grain or the noise in a street photo. I usually, well, I like to crop them to black and white anyway, or convert them to black and white, but I'm just not as concerned with the actual perfection and quality. I like a little grittier look in the street photography anyway, so it does not bother me. But that way, if you're in on a sunny day and you're out shooting and you have the auto ISO, it will allow you to shoot in a very bright area. And then if you duck into an alley real quick or want to shoot inside a doorway, something like that, then that 3200 will pop up. And of course, you're going to get grain and things, but you can adjust that in post. I don't do a lot of that, but if you really want to, you can. Okay, regarding my setup and menu settings video, he says, fantastic guide you filmed, thank you very much. I've just bought this little beast and I'm figuring out how to use it better. Your movie was very, very helpful. I watched it before looking through the manual because I thought it would be faster, and of course it's always faster. I'm not a complete newbie, but I've never owned a newer Ricoh or Pentax, and blah, blah, blah. I had a Fuji X70, la, 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 and I know there was a point to this. Let's see. Okay, here comes the point. While configuring my new Ricoh with your precious help, I realized an interesting fact. When you change your crop settings to 35 or 50 and you turn off the camera, it stays that way. It doesn't come back to 28. One has to keep in mind. However, it'd be nice possible if this change, they can make this change in the settings. Thanks for your wonderful job. Okay, well, yeah, I suppose it would, but make sure you go to this video. I'll show you this, and a very cute little friend of mine, and she helped me make this video. And in this video, you will see I address the crop factor from the 28 to the 35 to the 50, how I set my camera so I can do that. And yes, you are correct. It does stay wherever you are. Okay, one thing to keep in mind when you're using the 35 and 50 millimeter crop on the Ricoh GR3, I guess, I don't know what it's got on the X, but it's not a crop. It is actually, I'm sorry, it is a crop. It is not a telephoto. There's a difference. A telephoto at 35 or 50 will still give you the exact same megapixels as 18. That's not the way the Ricoh GR3 works. When you put it to 35 or 50, it is literally the same as you having the 28 on your screen, and then you literally crop it like in Lightroom or Photoshop. So you do lose, and then you're expanding it back to a regular size photo that stretches out the megapixels. You're not using full megapixels. So it's very important to know it's not a telephoto. You do lose quality at 35 and you lose more quality at 50. Again, the dynamic range is so good on the Ricoh GR3, that's probably not an issue, but keep that in mind, that is a difference. Okay, Steve C says, glad I found this. My GR came today. I took it out, some night street photography, mostly good, but a few images were blurry, so I used snap focus for sure. Do you recommend turning noise enhancement off or leaving it on? That is from Steve C. Always, if you go through my setup video, you will see I say always turn off all the extracurricular buttons. It's a word I made up. I didn't make up the word extracurricular, but as it applies to a camera, I made that up. You want to turn all that noise enhancement, everything off. I deal with everything in Lightroom, so it's easy for me to say that. If you're shooting straight to JPEG, maybe you want all that stuff. Typically, it's going to suck your battery, and sometimes the camera itself, in its electronic wisdom, will actually screw up a photo if you have a lot of that stuff turned on. So I leave IBIS on, of course, because I don't want blurry photos. Everything else I can turn off, I turn off. Noise reduction, any sort of help, you don't need the help. Get it as raw as possible, shoot in RAW, and, oops, telephone. Get it as raw as possible, shoot in RAW, and that way you have the final control and you can take that noise out in post if you want. If you're shooting straight to JPEG, again, the Ricoh GR3 does allow for editing and that sort of thing, post-production in the camera. It's too small for me to see. I don't like to do that. I like to take it to the big screen. So, however, you can do it, but I turn everything off. Go to the video that we just talked about there, the setup video, scan through it, and you'll see some of my suggestions on that. Okay, Steve C also asked a question in another video, and he asked, is this lens sensor better and bigger than, say, a Sony 1-inch? Excellent question, Steve, and I have an excellent answer for you. Yes, the quality is way better than a 1-inch because I can't give you the exact size, but let's say the sensor for an APS-C, which is in the Ricoh GR3, it's just as big as any regular DSLR camera that's not a full frame that you'll see out there. Let's say it's this big, this is the sensor. A 1-inch sensor is like this. Well, you're taking away a lot of space. Your phone sensor is about like this. And you still get good photos, right? But when you try to blow those way up, they're not going to look as good and crisp as a DSLR or definitely as a camera with a full frame package. So with the Ricoh GR3, the huge advantage you get over most compact cameras is it is an APS-C sensor. That is huge. It's a great sensor. Ricoh did a great job with that part. The internals of this camera are fantastic. The externals are what I have some problems with, but the internals are fantastic. And yes, you get a way better product. If you're only shooting to Instagram or Facebook and your photos are literally only going to be 5x7, something like that, and you don't print anything, it makes no difference at all then. Absolutely no difference at all. It's when you want to print. And I've got a video coming up about a couple books that I printed that you can do as well, very easy and actually free if you don't order one, but you order them by the book or by the lot, whatever. Point being, they're very inexpensive, and I like to do that as opposed to print them and put them in a photo album. I just put them in a book and I've got it forever, and it's online. I can get it whenever I want. That's coming up. If you want more info on that, let me know. But the difference is if you print these and you want to print out a big 24x36, something like that, and you got a little 1-inch sensor, you're going from this all the way out to this, doesn't work. So even the APS-C, you've got a limit on how big you can make that print. That's why people buy full frames cameras, because they can then make the prints larger without losing quality. To the naked eye, it's very hard to detect, but it's there and it will start getting blurry. Your megapixels basically just start expanding and you become, they get bigger. That's going to be blurry or noise looking to you. Okay, Nick says, you really made going to buy this camera. Okay, I think he means he went and bought the camera. I'm sure I got no credit for that whatsoever. Wondering how you edit those photos. Hope you will give me some tips. Really love your photos. Okay, well, here's the video. I did a couple videos on how I edit. I just go through some basic editing, so you can check that out, and hopefully that will help you. Okay, so that's it for some of my recent Ricoh GR3 questions. I do appreciate it. I'm going to do another video next week for those of you that have asked questions about the Fuji X-T1 and the Pentax K70. So if you have specific questions about those two cameras, make sure and put them in the comment section below, and I will address those first in next week's video, and then I will go through some of the other comments that have been left previously. But if you leave a comment below specifically about the Ricoh GR3 or the Pentax K70 or the, I knew I wouldn't be able to whip through all three of those, or the Fuji X-T1, or their lenses, accessories, anything you see in my videos, leave it in the comments section below, and I will address those in next week's video. I appreciate it. I'm going to try to do these every week, try to have some more communication with you guys. It's 2023. I'm going to try to jack up the channel a little more. I took a little bit of a hiatus here last year, kind of just hit and miss, shot a lot of film, and I kind of got that out of my system. I'll continue shooting film, but it will not be my priority and the only thing I focus on. So if you have questions, guys, and any comments like that, please leave them, and we will start this discussion on an ongoing basis. All right, I appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one.